are live on YouTube, and I'm here with John Atkinson. John is a student of mine. I absolutely adore this man. He's been a very good student. He's been a very good student, and we love to have our talks. So we decided that we would do a series of YouTube lives together, where he could ask me questions and he could add his viewpoints, and I don't know. It's always a good time. So here is Johnny. Say hi, John.
How's it going, everyone? So excited to be here, Guru. Episode 2. We have some great things to cover, you guys, this episode. And the first episode, Guru, I think was a huge success. We actually do have a few questions from last time. If you haven't checked out episode 1, definitely go back and check that episode out. There was a lot of things about purification, Guru. And I had a question that came in from one of our viewers, and it was asking, why is it so important for the process of purification on the four bodies in regards to our connection with God? And they went into further ask, why do things that don't purify us cut us off from God? And why do we live in a world where there's so many things that do that? And I wanted you to answer that in terms of why is it so important to, even more so, I think, on my viewpoint, why it's so important to purify yourself in today's world.
Okay. That's a really great question, and I'm so glad they asked you. Okay. So bottom line is, if you think about what God is, at least even if it's just conceptual, if God is the purest thing, the purest energy that you can conceive of, and it's the most intelligent, it's the highest resonance, then the way to see eye to eye with that is to become as close as you can to that resonance as possible. And the only way you can do that is through purification. So if God is pure everything, then we get to purify our bodies in a way that would align with that. And anything that isn't pure would get in the way. So it would literally stop the overall consciousness of being one with that. So if it has to do with bad foods, bad water, chemicals, or anything that we talked about the last time, then it would literally create blockages in order for there to be a completely free, pure flow in that direction, if that makes sense. And so, and that goes with all of the bodies. So if there's emotional and mental issues that you're grappling with, so if you're one of those people, and most people have this, where you'll just be randomly, maybe you're driving your car and you'll have these random obtrusive thoughts that are things from your past that maybe you still feel guilty about, or embarrassed about, or something. There's something in there. Maybe angry. Angry's pretty common. Then that's a sign from your unconscious that there are still things in the way with that ultimate connection to who you truly are. And spiritually as well. I mean, you get to purify how you communicate with that highest part of you. So the idea is that you get to raise the ego mind all the way up to the threshold of where, that highest consciousness is, and raise it up to that level of purification so that when it sees eye to eye, the veil drops and you realize you've always been that being. Does that make sense?
That's super powerful. Yeah, that totally makes sense, because wouldn't we say if the ego is lower, the ego is going to try to bring us down from that higher residency. Is that correct?
Yes. So, and that's kind of the job of the ego. See, the ego is it has a, I don't want to call it broken. Let's just say our human consciousness decided to design something as a child in hopes that it would work for us for the rest of our lives. And it's not the same as our highest self or that part of ourselves. It's just not. It's a action. It's the action behind your own inherent divinity, which is grace. So if the action, or if the mechanics aren't working properly, you're not going to actually be able to communicate properly with that part of yourself. They both get to align and become one. And the way to do that is through purification, because what you're trying to align with is the purest part of you. And that's the only way to reach it and to be able to understand it. So you get to keep purifying in order to get there.
Got it. And for our viewers viewing, is that purification process is never ending, right, Guru?
That is correct. So you've never arrived, and the moment you think you've arrived, you've lost. So if you think, I'm already pure, I've already done all this work, I'm already great, it doesn't matter. It's a journey. There
Mhm.
isn't a single person who continues to elevate that ever thinks they've arrived. I mean, we look at the top opera singers of this planet and how every week they still go to vocal lessons. Just, I got to stay sharp. I got to learn more. There's got to be a way that I can continue to expand, and that highest part of yourself continues to expand every day. It's just, the thinking that you arrived is your ego, and you should definitely just shut that down as soon as possible.
Mhm. Great. So that gains clarity for that question coming in from last episode. We have one more in regards to someone was asking uh, how to cultivate quiet time in a so-called busy day. So we talked about last episode is it's so important to have some sort of daily practice to connect with oneself, to connect with your higher self, and also God. And this person, actually, the person felt motivated, Guru, which I wanted to give you some feedback I didn't share, to get more into their four bodies. So they've chosen to start working out their physical because they obviously heard that's the most tangible place to start, because they weren't doing that. And I thought that was incredible. And they were asking, well, John, I'm waking up to go to the gym. I work 12-hour days. How do I cultivate some sort of routine? So I wanted you to answer that first, and then I could maybe share what you have helped me with cultivating, because I used to work super early, and that was one of my challenges too, Guru, when I first started seeing you. How do I create the time?
Right. Uh, so this is going to, it might almost sound like that I'm not being empathetic, but I completely am. Working a 12-hour day is a big deal. It's very exhausting. But it's almost like, what are you committed to creating? So it's about meditation and sitting with yourself in silence. Everyone can sacrifice that extra half hour in the morning and wake up at the crack of dawn where everyone's asleep, and you can cultivate that quiet time for yourself. In fact, the best time to meditate is right as the sun's coming up. So depending on what the hours are that you're working, that might actually be ideal. So to have that symbology of the sun coming up while you're meditating is a sign or a conversation that you'd be having not only with your own divinity but your unconscious mind, letting it know, I'm up and ready to rise with you in every moment. I'm going to seize the day. I'm going to come out of the ethers like the sun. And to do that, utilizing that symbology every day is a beautiful thing. So let's say you work even earlier than that. Chances are there's probably not going to be a lot of people in your household that are awake that early. Take that extra, even if it's 15 minutes. Take that
Mhm.
time, sit in a quiet spot, light a candle, and enjoy the silence. So it's just, there's no reason why not to do that. It's for you. It's for your own connection, and then carry that with you for the rest of the day. And remember, all day long, wow, I did this really interesting thing that I never did. I woke up extra early, and I had that moment just for me.
Mhm.
And that's something really, it's a very important message to send to yourself. It's an act of self-love.
Mhm. Yeah, I think with you helping me, and that's a great answer for the question that that person had. You helped me really look at the story I was playing. Like, hey, John, if you're creating time and choices to maybe go to the gym like this person is, you can make that choice to have your quiet time. I think we get so caught up in the busyness story of our society where, oh, how are you doing? Busy. How's this going? Busy. And you hear that word busy all the time instead of canceling, clearing it in your mind and going, hey, let me dive days. Let me, like you said, let me go to earlier, or even do meditation before bed. There's different ways to cultivate quiet time, but you have really instilled in me that those morning hours are so precious to connect with self and God, as those set the tone for the rest of the day. And what I learned from you, Guru, is when, say, for some reason I would miss those opportunities because I would work you guys at 4 to 5 a.m. and I had that same story, like, how am I going to fit this all in? I could do it in the afternoon. It just feels different than those morning hours when the world is so quiet. And so I would wake up, not super early, like you said, Guru. Start with 15 minutes. I think the biggest thing you helped me with was making that decision,
Right.
and you help so many clients do that. And that's such a big thing, is being in your power, making that decision for yourself. And so many times people think about doing it rather than, hey, I'm going to commit to this, I'm going to decide to do that. So but thanks for sharing that, Guru. And you've helped me so much of loving that early time. People still look at me crazy, and I'm like, just try it. I'm not telling you what to do. Just try and wake up early and enjoy your quiet time. And there's been so many people that are like, wow, that really has helped me, um, enjoy that quiet time. So we'll get into the episode, you guys, now. So just kind of wanted to answer those questions and get things flowing. This episode, I want to talk about the power of sound. So we've been doing some incredible community events, and I thought, well, maybe a lot of people don't know the beauty and power of sound, and what it does for our four bodies, what it does for our lives, and what does it do for the people around us. So, Guru, just start with what, I wouldn't say the definition, but some type of origin of the power of sound, and why sound healings and baths are so important for our human body and human souls.
Aw, that's really awesome. John's right. We've never actually talked about, in any of the lives that I've ever done, I've never really talked that much about some of the live events that we do locally. And one of the things that we do twice a month is a sound healing for the locals out in Orange County in California. And we do it at a beautiful center. They do weddings there, so it's a nice big room. It's perfect. It's gorgeous in there, and so then we set up all of our instruments. So we utilize singing bowls, crystal singing bowls and tuning forks, and we have a gong, and we have all rain sticks. We have all kinds of things that we use. A hand pan and a whole bunch of other things that we utilize, and bells and things. And it's actually beginning to kind of make a really profound impact on our community and the people that are coming. I mean, we give them an opportunity to share afterwards, and it's always highly impactful, and everyone is beginning to truly understand what the impact of coming every 2 weeks does for them, and in their shares. So it's been a beautiful experience, and I really want to thank my community out here for supporting us in this way, and in turn actually coming out and enjoying what we're trying to create, because really we don't really make anything from the events. It's really more about how is it serving them. Putting on events like that is always really expensive, so all the money that we make mostly just goes to charity, to children's charities, and then the rest of it goes to the venue. And then if there's anything left behind, it usually covers the cost of everything that we're creating there, and that's about it. So, but it's been really wonderful. Anyway, to get to your question, you wanted to know how how sound heals, basically
Hmm.
how sound heals. So, and that's a complicated answer because there's a lot of different ways that it heals and there's a lot of different reasons why. So I'm going to just pick out a couple things and talk about those. I hope that's okay, because to encapsulate all of it would take a lot longer than the time we've allotted today. So, but I can say this. Let's go. One of the instruments that I use for healing in office and at the events that we do has to do with tuning forks, right? So tuning forks are, when it comes to, if they're calibrated to all of your chakra system, it's very important because there are specific megahertz that every chakra emanates. So there's the root chakra is going to have a different megahertz than your crown, and tuning forks are dually toned, so the tone that you hear in the air, in the atmosphere, is different from when it's right up against you.
Mm.
It's the tone that your body would experience right up against you that's important for the retuning of your chakras. So if your chakra goes out of tune, chances are, you're going to be feeling the effects of what that means for you. So as an example, if the root chakra is out and that's what's keeping you grounded and in alignment with everything, then maybe you're feeling scattered, or maybe you're having a hard time figuring out the world, at the time. It could be anything, really. So maybe it's really close to your sexual organs, and maybe part of the reason why your root chakra is always out has to do with, past trauma or molestation or something that happened to you. And so maybe it's really hard to get your root to go back into place. Tuning forks support with that. It's the resonance, it's the sound, because our body, you might not be able to hear it, but some people that meditate for a long time, at one point they'll hear the resonance, the hum of their body and what it actually emanates, because it does. There is tones that come from your body. We don't hear them because we exist within this space all the time, and it's just something that we're deaf to most of the time. But it does exist, and if you get to a point in your meditation, not only it's almost like you become a little bit superhuman with certain things, because meditation itself will allow you to hear those tones. So tuning those parts of those aspects, those energy centers in your body back to its divine blueprint is highly beneficial to get you feeling optimal. And when they're tuned, a lot of the time people don't understand how they feel better or even why. It's like, I just feel better. I feel clean. I feel light. Why? And it's, well, you're originating back to who you were before it went out. What your natural state. And the same with your auric field. Your auric field will let off very specific tones, but let's say you're using crystal singing bowls in order to release certain things from your auric field. Now, your auric field is very interesting because it's not just a representation of the energy within the soul, but it serves other purposes. One of the purposes is it's almost like it's a bit of an energetic force field. So if anything comes at you in the world, it won't actually get to the core of you, of your spirit, right inside your body. It's meant to catch these things, kind of like our skin, our epidermis, is meant to stop anything from getting in our bloodstream. It serves a similar purpose. So singing bowls support with resonating some of these things out of your auric fields, getting them out so that you feel clean again. Because sometimes you have stage 4 clingers attached to your auric field and you want to get them off. So through sound, it's the vibration. It really does support with getting those types of things off and out of your auric field. So I could go on and on about sound, but those are actually a couple of important points, and I hope that I covered enough to your satisfaction. Please do let me know if you have another question.
That that was phenomenal, and I think it gives the viewers what just like a taste of what sound can do. What stood out to me, Guru, was back when you said it gets it back into its divine blueprint. If you could touch on real quick, I know it's a deep thing. Another deep kind of thing is the divine blueprint. What is that? What if someone asked me what is the divine blueprint? What would you answer?
Ah, okay. So I would say if I were to, in a nutshell, if I were to, you're right. Excuse me, something in my eye. There is that is we again. That's just another subject we could probably talk for hours about. But I would say the pure to get yourself to the purest part of who you can be, what you could resonate at in this lifetime. So divine blueprint meaning as aligned to your divinity as you possibly can be in your spiritual body.
Mm,
So if your root chakra is out and it's the megahertz is a little bit off of what it's resonating at, if it's tuned correctly and it comes back to where it's supposed to be, then it's closer to who you are as a divine being.
mm. Would you say with what you just said, us coming into this world, in baby form, right? Is our whole our whole life we're trying to return back to that origin of being, or do you think there's two different sets of origin? So one of origin that you come into the world, and then an origin for leaving this world and getting you ready for what else is to come past that.
Wow, that's a very complex question. So, who you come into this planet as is definitely not who you're supposed to stay as. So you're not going to want to get back to that place. It's you get to continue to evolve and grow and learn your lessons so that you can, make the decision of whether you're going to want to stay on your karmic wheel or not. Because, until you learn your lessons completely, you're going to be thrown right back, into your lives and continue to come back here until you learn them. It's like, nope, go back to school. You haven't figured it out, son. You failed physics. You got to go back. So, but that's just if we can pick up the pace with that and understand that everything that's being thrown at us is a lesson and continue to evolve and grow our consciousness. My God, no, you don't want to be back to where you were because that would have been, that would be like you would have to do this life all over again. And a lot of people just they don't want to do that. They're like, no, I'm done. I don't want to go back. But no, you want to retain a certain kind of purity and rediscover that purity as you continue to evolve and hang on to it despite what's happening outside. So it's really truly just about understanding and recognizing who you are and hanging on to that as a pillar and not letting go. So it's kind of like that when we talked about in the last episode, we were talking about how standing in neutrality and watching the landscape so that you're not judging people, but at the same time, you're hanging on to the pillar of who you are to be at all times. There's a purity in that, especially if you're picking something like unconditional love and towards everything and everyone all of the time. And it's funny. Oh, I love myself. Do you? But they don't really know what that means though. And that's okay. I don't think people have really been taught what unconditional love truly means because they've never experienced it in the world. So how could they? But yeah, no, it's more about recognizing, the landscape of growth that you get to go through, and continuing with a sense of purity, but at the same time hopping through your lessons so that you evolve past baby stage and that consciousness into something that's greater and evolved and connecting with your divine self.
Got it. I like that. And I liked how you said rediscovering your purity throughout that journey. And that's where that continue of origin, getting back to that origin. Would you say getting back to that origin really means rediscovering your purity in each moment, or at that choice, at the choices you make?
Mm. I would say rediscovering purity has to do with, because you're pure at the core of who you are.
Mhm.
So rediscovering that part of yourself and taking off all the layers of inauthenticity that shouldn't be there anyway, in order for you to recognize and acknowledge who you truly are at the core of your being, because you're not going to know who you are until that happens, right? You're just going to think that you're this inauthentic quality or that that inauthentic quality, but that's not true. You aren't those, you aren't jealousy, you aren't rage, you aren't judgment, you aren't these things. It's just limiting beliefs that you've decided to believe in as you've been growing. If you
Mm.
release those and decide, well, if I'm going to adopt more of a God view and say I'm unconditional love, I'm going to stand in neutrality instead, then these types of things start to drop, and you're getting closer to the core of who you are instead of all the things that are piled on top that makes it's not really you. It's just ideas and concepts. The core of who you are is who you are. And until you discover that, until you learn that, you're really not going to know who you are in your purest form. So you get to go through the process of releasing all this stuff. And then once you do, then you can see who you are, this shiny, bright being that is, capable of doing a lot more than you might think right now, depending on what your limiting beliefs are. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Makes sense, totally. And that goes into the next part, is when people say, "Oh, you look really good." It sometimes people think it's a physical compliment, but it could be that their aura is so bright and it's so engaging. And you touched on it, is I wrote down here, because you said like the aura is like the epidermis is our skin. I said the aura, or I wrote down the aura skin of the soul.
Right, right. Exactly. And
So
I think you asked a question there, but I'm flaking out on that one. What
you're,
did you ask me?
yeah, you're good. Is like when someone makes a compliment of, oh, you, like, say you haven't seen someone in a while, and it happens when we're out there in the world. Hey, you look really good. It might not mean
Physically, right?
physically. It just might mean you've done so much work and you're doing some great things on the internal, that radiates outward in the form of your aura.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true, and that, because people see it. You're a spirit. You are a spirit. It's inside of you. That's who you are. That's the only thing you are. You're borrowing this meat suit, and that's it. So if there is something that is causing you to connect or purify or brighten to that part of you at the core of who you are, which is the purity of your spirit, then yes, people are going to notice because they're a spirit too. They might not know why. Uh, Maybe they're blind to it, but the reason why. But they'll know that it's there because people are smart. They can see that, and they can see it in you. So yeah, a lot of the time it has nothing to do with physical appearance.
Mm.
And sometimes it will affect your physical appearance anyway. So people will start to look younger. People will, they'll shed all the weight that was, causing health problems for them or
Mhm.
something like that. And they'll, I'm not saying weight equates to attractiveness at all. I mean, everyone's attractive where they're at. I just
Mhm.
mean if it's causing a problem health wise and they start to glow because they're healthier. That's all. So
Got it.
but there's a lot of different ways to look at it. But yeah, the purification of your human consciousness in alignment with the soul really does promote that glow that people love. And I know that you've had that feedback a lot in your life too.
Mhm. Mhm. And also people, like we're touching on the sound bath, how you said, is like, people just look different when they come into an event, or like you always say, when you come into a session with yourself too, you look different. And then your thing is always, you look really good. And sometimes we don't realize that until we head out the door, and then look yourself in the mirror later, or how you feel. And so I loved how you were touching on the tuning forks. Just touch on the main, I would say the main instrument of the actual bowls and what those represent at an event or in your sessions.
Okay, so the singing bowls that I have 7 crystal singing bowls, all representing each of the major chakras in American culture. Because in other cultures, there's more major chakras. So, just for the sake of argument, I'm going to just talk about the American culture right now. So, and each of them have a specific megahertz, and each of them, so so when you play each of them, it's you want that energy washing over your body because each of your chakras has something to offer the auric field, and it does tune the different chakras you have, but you want that energy washing over your auric field because there's a power in each of those tonalities, and each of them are going to do something different in as far as cleansing the auric field. So you're going to want all of them to support you with getting those types of things out. And once people start getting into a meditative space with that, sometimes they'll actually have the experience of it releasing. And we've had in our just in our events, but I there I've heard everything from my back pain is gone, my shoulder pain is gone, so physical issues. I was really sick and now I feel fine. To just the spiritual and the mental body as well, just the release. I mean, we've had some massive transformations just in the events. I mean, I have them in my office all the time, sure, but the
Mhm.
events, just for sitting there for an hour and letting specific sounds wash over you, it's made a huge difference in a lot of people's lives. And
Mhm.
we might think about bringing some of them on here, John, just to talk about their own experience, so just so people understand, because I can say till I'm blue in the face that, hey, this has been working for people, but unless they come on and talk about it, then there's really no context. So we should
Mhm.
probably just bring those people on if they want to come on and say, this is my organic experience
Uh-huh.
authentically.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we could divert some of these viewers we're incredible having to, I would say, the library of testimonials from these events. Because, like you say, Guru, is some of these people sharing, it's like it's changing their life, you guys, in a radical timeline. Like you said, Guru, in an hour, hour and a half sound bath and that they've had for years. The last one we had on Sunday, some gal said I think it was like 5+ years of shoulder pain, and it was completely gone. And I'm just like, that changes people's lives, you guys, and that's what we're here to do. That's why you're here, Guru, myself, and our other incredible team, just to help the collective rise and serve the collective. So but you're right. We have to have that library of testimonials because it moves mountains for other people as well. So I liked how you said the megahertz in terms of the bowls. What does that specifically mean? So break one of those bowls down in terms of a megahertz type of thing and how that relates to the body. Because I think even when I was starting to learn more and more about sound and the megahertz of our own bodies, uh, how does that correlate to what what we're speaking about and the different megahertz of the bowls based on your chakra system and how that cleanses the auric field or clears things out. And I think for myself is you might feel cleared out, but also too, it takes multiple, like we spoke about earlier. Just because you do one thing once, it's not gonna like clear it long term. But some things come, like the person with the shoulder, it cleared it out after 5 years of pain. So touch on, Guru, to recircle back around the megahertz and break down what megahertz means correlating to the actual bowl, which then correlates to the shock. Just pick a chakra or one of the bowls type it per se.
Okay, I think the easier way to do it, because it's hard to pick up a bowl and show you because it doesn't really have anything printed on it. I can
Yeah.
show you my. I have this
Oh yeah.
MetaVibe technology tuning fork. This one is the heart chakra. You can see
Wow.
the numbers down there. It's at, I believe, I'm trying to read it on my screen. It says
One.
136.10. That is the megahertz. And, and when you hit it, oops, it's going to sound like this in the room. And maybe, I don't know where the microphone is on this computer.
I could hear
I'm
it.
cleansing you! So, yeah, so this is the tonality, this is the tuning. So if you're tuning it back to the heart, you're tuning it back to that megahertz.
Okay.
Yeah. So uh and that's kind of how it correlates. Hold on. And then so with the heart, I have my handy dandy little chart here that I don't give out anymore, but I should. I did years and years ago. So
Uh-huh.
with the heart, it's the element that it's related to is air, as an example. The color is green because that's the color of the chakra. And the musical note associated with the heart is usually F, just so we're clear. And
Mm.
so physiologically, we're talking about respiratory, cardiovascular, and lymphatic immune functions. And then if we go into the psychological functions, we're talking about love of others, compassion, and harmony. People think that the heart chakra has to do with love of themselves, but it doesn't. It has to do with love of others. The love of
Mm.
yourself is your throat. So if you're having
Mm.
issues with your throat, then, just so you know, it's most commonly associated with self love. Uh,
Wow.
and then self expression and self image, as an example. But all the chakras have their own color, depending on, usually correlated with the chakra color, and their own musical note that they're tuned to naturally. And there's a physiological function to it. So with the root, it might have to do with, if you're constipated or just the movement in there. And then the sacral, which is right by the belly button there, we're talking about reproduction and colon. So with root, it might have something to do with survival, security, transmutation, generally speaking. With sacral, we're talking about relationships, sexual energy, and purification and stuff like that. So if you're having discomfort, pain around the sacral area, or issues physically that's going on, then chances are you have some unresolved issues physically. I'm not even talking mentally, because mentally maybe you've already taken care of it. But if you haven't purified in all the four bodies, it might
Mm.
still be in your physical. And if physical is one of the things that you skipped out on and didn't purify it from the physical body.
Mm.
So if the sacral has to do with relationships, sexual energy, and purification, what if you were molested or something sexual happened to you in the past that wasn't so great, and you're hanging on to that? You might still be having issues right there, or relationships with your family, or romantic partnerships, or what have you. It would all land right by the navel, right by your belly button. And a lot of people have a lot of pain there. And releasing that for people is very cathartic and very healing. And the type of feeling that they get from that afterwards is just like, why do I feel so clean? Well, you were
Mm.
hanging on to a lot of really nasty energy around there. It's just the way
Mm.
it is. So, and then if you're moving up in between the rib cage, like if you were to put your hand right up in your solar plexus there, right where your rib cage, right before it ends and you get your sternum here, then we're talking about personal power, life force, emotions, pleasure, mental capacity, and ambition.
Mm.
So if you're feeling like you're depleted in your life force, you're going to have a lot of pain there. And it's going to be, whether you know it's there or not, take the time to get in there and touch it, because not everyone has pain there, but you
Mm.
might, if you feel like your personal power or your life force has been reduced, depending on what's going on in your life. As an example, I could talk
Mhm.
about this for days, so I'm going to stop here. But there's
Yeah,
there's a
there's
lot of info that you know what I mean.
so much great information on that in regards to the megahertz. And as you say, retuning, I think of it, Guru, too, as like the most tangible thing to relate it to is like someone's car, right? You hear all those people like, well, I have all these car problems. And then you ask them, well, when's the last time you went in for a tune, like a tune up, right? And so that's how our system works is the more we've gone years without cleaning things up, the more of a major service it's going to be or major uh, purge of the chakras. So yeah, thanks for clarifying that. And it was so beautifully said. Now, in regards to the sound bath itself, what do you think makes your events different than the typical sound bath?
I'm trying to decide whether I want to go off of people's feedback first and then my opinion second. So I guess I'm just going to do that. So some of the feedback that I've been receiving of why people think it's different from other sound baths that they've been to is that it's more like an orchestration. It's not a rambling, just random sounds being created where there's no grace and there's no flow. We've taken the time with our events to make sure not only that all the instruments that are being played are in tune with each other, which a lot of people don't do when they do these types of events. We're all musicians, so when we create the music, we're very mindful of tonality and how things fit in, and pacing and creating space and dynamics and all kinds of things in order to take people on a journey. It's really, really, really important. And so but we did get that feedback. We're just like, this is I feel like I'm in an orchestra. Like this is it's so well put together, and I can tell that it's been very mindful from beginning to end what is the energy that's being created in order to, with precision, uh, create very specific types of healing, because each of the events, there's a goal, there's a specific healing that happens, there's a specific journey that happens, so they're not all the same. And um, and I don't imagine they will ever be. So we create them and we cater them to who's in the room at that moment. And in order to do that, you get to have an intuitive sense. It helps to understand, who's actually coming to your events. That doesn't always happen, but if you have a read on a bunch of people in the room and they're all feeling, maybe they're feeling suicidal, maybe they're feeling really depressed, maybe they're all really angry or anxious, then you're going to cater a lot of what you're doing, aiming to cut into those types of consciousness through sound. And it's an art form. And so there's a lot of precision there, there's a lot of detail there. We bring people through a journey, and it isn't just about making a bunch of sound. We'll do a meditation, we'll get people into it, we'll do some breath work, and when it's complete, then we'll go into a community. It's like a community bonding experience where we talk about everything that happened, and people ask questions, and then they share, and we bond with each other. We create safe space for people to be able to have their experience, and that's what makes it different. I mean, it's very deep, moving experience that you really can't find in today's modern age. I'm sure there's people doing it, and I would love to hear about those people so that I could talk about you and share it to other people maybe in your area. I think that would be lovely, because everyone should have that experience locally. And at one point, I'm hoping to do it a little bit online. I don't know if it would come off. If I had somebody running around with a camera, I don't know if it would come off the way that we're presenting it, but you never know. So I'm open to that in the future.
Yeah, what stands out with the event itself is the journey from start to end. I think so many times and it's not a judgment on my sake, it's just pure experience, is that flow is sometimes cookie cutter of, oh, this is, our monthly event and it's kind of the same. We really cater towards, like you said, Guru, who's coming in the room, reading that energy and cultivating an experience where we start up here and go so deep into that journey um, as a group. But then the great part is everyone's having their own individual experience. And that's where we hear the testimonials come from. But I feel like as a community group, it's one of those things where it's so close knit of the energy, yet everyone's having a unique experience. And one thing that stands out to me is exactly what you said is the orchestra type uh, and it almost could be, and I know I've shared my feedback to you is like it almost could be an album, you know, and I think that's somewhat in the works, and it keeps coming down as a download for myself when I'm facilitating and helping the people that are attending, you know, through certain things or if they need anything. Uh, but that's my view is those sounds and what we just shared you guys through the megahertz, it's those healing megahertz that one could listen to part of their daily practice, and people do that, and that's through meditation as well. So it could be a great idea, Guru. I know I've shared that multiple times, and it always keeps coming up as like, oh, it could be an album. And you didn't even share the one thing that, probably because you're so humble, is the singing part. You know, you have such a beautiful voice, added layer in touch with that, and all that orchestra type thing. And I've never experienced that at any other sound bath that I've attended. And that almost feels like, I would say, you know, the unity of the room and also God speaking to all of us, not calling us out, as I always say, but calling us forward to whatever we're going through when we're attending or facilitating. So that was kind of my takeaways, you guys, because I'm right there in that room facilitating, and I've also attended as well. And like Guru's saying, is if you guys have a chance to attend a sound bath event in your local city, it's a great place to start. And just because you attend one event doesn't mean you can't attend multiple and try out what's calling to your soul and to your heart as well. So, but yeah, Guru, I love that topic. I love just giving that, like you say, the landscape of what is possible for people.
Yeah, yeah, it's well, and when it comes to the voice and adding voice into a sound bath experience, one of the delicate procedures when it comes to that is it's important to be truly connected to not just the room but to the instrument itself in a way that's um gosh, I mean, how do I even explain it? It's so with a singing bowl, it's almost like it has one main tone but multiple tonalities while it's singing. And it and then it's a living thing, and it jumps around the room, and it wanders around people. And you know, if you've ever been around a singing bowl, a crystal singing bowl, and you're just sitting there with your eyes closed, and you're in an enclosed space, you'll notice that this bowl moves around. I mean, it doesn't stay in one spot. It travels because it's a living thing at that point. And so how you incorporate voice into that is that you get to ask permission to the bowl if your voice can join in unison with that and create its own living thing. And if you're doing it right, then it becomes very powerful, and then it shoots around the room, and the voice actually gets carried with the bowl sound, and you know, moves around and becomes like this living thing. And that's what makes it so incredibly magical. So it's a bit of an art form, and it's a real pleasure to do, but it's also, you know, being able to connect in that way. There's well, it's a very humbling experience, honestly. So I'm grateful that I can do it for people, and I'm glad you brought
Mhm.
it up because it's healing, sound healing overall for people, just not only just for the sake of community, but just the idea that you can have this moment of self love where you're serving that part of yourself, your energetic body, where you can decompress and release a few things that aren't serving you within the time frame of just being able to sit and listen to the sounds. I mean, it's truly win-win if you're in the right situation with people.
Mhm, mhm. So beautiful, Guru. Thanks for sharing. What's so if there's some viewers locally in Orange County, what's the best way to attend an event, or where would someone go to check out the info?
Oh, okay. Well, I have my email address on somewhere
On
actually. I guess I could put it in the
comments.
info. Yeah, I'll put it in the info uh, for this video, so that
Yeah.
if anyone wants to come to any, I'll just send them a link through email. It's iamshamananda@gmail.com. So, you know, anyone can email me, and if you have questions even about your life or problems that you're going through and you don't really know what to do, then you know, if I see it and if I can, I always try to answer all of them. So please, please do
Or
reach out.
or I even thought even questions on future topics to you guys, people that are viewing in. If you want Guru and I to touch on certain topics, we come up with the topics for you guys. But if there's something in your life, definitely email some of those topics in, and we could touch on them. Or if you have questions of that nature. So yeah, that's the sound bath, you guys. We're gonna transition into the polarity of the world, Guru. And first off, define the word polarity and why, right now in the current world, the polarity for many, such as the collective and on an individual level, could seem off.
So in what way can you be a little bit more specific on that, as far as what feels off to you?
Yeah, so the polarity, I think, for the collective, so we have the feminine energy and the masculine energy. And I always get fired up about this topic because it comes out in so many conversations, or why people have sometimes a hard time grasping certain things, and the fact of energetically, why do they feel, maybe burnt out at their job, or their creative flows off, or maybe they're an entrepreneur and they're very, maybe too much in one or the other. And as you and I both know, it goes hand in hand and it's flowing. Uh, I would just to touch on the polarity of the masculine being off for men being called to rise and lead more in the world, and then also the conditioning in the collective of women um, really overdoing it in their masculine energy and feeling, burnt out, whether they're a mother, whether they own businesses, they take on multiple hats, and how they can really get in tuned back into their feminine energy, or um, practices that they can do, because it comes up. So it comes up in my business when I coach people all the time, whether it's men or women. And it's just, I always think it's always a fascinating topic, because it's thrown around more and more, as we've come out of the last 2 years of what has come on in the world. So uh, I know
What?
that was a direct question, but
No, no, no. I like. Okay,
I'm
so
jumping around.
polarity is two contradicting places, right? So it's almost like what side are you going to stick to? So if it has to do with masculine and feminine, the polarity you're talking about is between the masculine and feminine, which side you're going to stick to. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so when it comes to women being in their masculine and men being in their feminine, I'm of the belief that we get to have a perfect balance of both. So the women get to experience, strongly their feminine and masculine, and even using these terms like this is almost taboo now, because people are doing their best to rewrite what that means. And so when I say masculine and feminine, I'm not necessarily talking about traditional male and female roles. Like men get to go to work and women get to stay in the kitchen and be pregnant. I'm not talking about those things.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about masculine and feminine energies. It's
Mm-hmm.
different. It's just a different way to categorize it. So, as an example of a masculine energy in nature, you would be, sitting on boulders and meditating with boulders. It's very masculine. Whereas a more feminine energy in nature would have to do with observing, a wildflower moving back and forth and connecting with that wispy feeling, that wispy energy. So it's in nature and energetically, we're talking about more of a masculine is more almost like a teutonic, like I'm a man and this is what I do. But it's not necessarily what we're trying to get you to incorporate in life. It's just a distinction between the two. So, as far as the polarity between going back and forth between the two, I guess we get to understand, uh, you know, women get to figure out what femininity or what being a woman means to them. Now, depending on what kind of a woman you are, you're going to, it's going to be different. So it's going to be, I think that answer is really going to be different for everyone. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're a lesbian and you're very much more in your masculine than anything because that's who you are, then your feminine's going to look very different, because the feminine for someone who's more masculine or a male looks very different from someone that's, wanting to be a little bit more feminine. So it's difficult without actually talking to a person who's struggling with a very specific thing, because it's so it's so germane to just that person, right? And
Mm-hmm.
what their balance gets to be. But there should be a balance in your life of being able to be really strong and knowing what true strength is. In my opinion, strength comes from vulnerability, being able to be completely vulnerable and exposed and authentic because of that. So eventually it doesn't hurt anymore because, you're just letting the wound breathe, so to speak. So all kinds of things are going to breathe in and out of that. And eventually it'll refine you to the point where you just feel okay. You feel fine. And you feel strong standing in that part of yourself. Just being completely authentic. I'm hearing this weird beeping sound. That's so funny. Um,
It's on your side or my side?
I think it might be yours. I don't know. It's like someone's whistling. I don't know. It's kind of funny. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know if this is making any sense. Am I kind of going in the direction that?
Yes, I think you hit it on the head in terms of distinguishing and having clarity, because I think in the collective, what you were touching on is we think about the role rather than the energy.
Right.
How you shared that, because people get so locked in, whether it's, you know, whatever, like you said, whoever we're talking to, locked in on the role of what does masculine look like? And like you said, that's in multiple different ways. How does the feminine energy look like? That's in multiple different ways, depending on the person you're talking to. But I think as a collective, we're so conditioned of like, this is a masculine type of thing. This is the role, rather than how does that energy feel like when you're
Right.
doing that? Yeah, I coach, for example, I coach women in my business, right? And some of them are super masculine in their business, but they flip around in their super feminine energy at the house or at their home life. They're cultivating, they're artistic, they're doing different things, but maybe in their business they want more of that role type of thing, where maybe it's a little bit slower. They're leading themselves, certain things like that. Or on the male side is you have very masculine people in business, and then they have that softer side with their loved ones or their kids, or they're out there being in touch with their inner child, where you're like, whoa, I just saw that person, that male on stage, doing his thing, and then he's very soft. That feminine energy could be soft for him too. So I think, Guru, there's a lot of gray area, but also too, like you said, it's always in flux of the movement, depending on situation and how I think we wake up too on certain days. I know for myself, sometimes it's, I could feel super feminine in terms of the energetic being that's inside me, or also too super masculine where I'm just like, I want to get things done. And that's sometimes how I am too. So yeah, I don't know if you wanted to add too much. I guess I guess it's not as tangible topic as I might have imagined.
It can be. I mean, it's getting into specific. I think that, I mean, we could talk about the specific energies in your life and how you balance out and stuff like that. But when we talk about just, and I know it's been clear, and I want to be really clear, talking about masculine and feminine energies, it is not a role. It is not, women should be barefoot in the kitchen and men should be strong and bring home, the paycheck or something like that. We're not talking about that at all. Male
Mhm.
and female energy is completely different, and it's so if a female energy, only the energy, not the person necessarily, can be softer. It can be very loving, and it can be very nurturing. It can be very motherly, as an example, and masculine energy, not the person, but the energy could be the drive to, uh, you know, lead, or, and it's not because women can't lead or anything like that. So it's not about that. It's just how people have defined certain energy in order to just basically to explain something, to make sense of it. But it's not because women can't lead or anything like that. It has nothing to do with that. But
Mhm.
it's more of a hard and fast, and sometimes masculine energy can be very aggressive and angry too. And not that women can't get angry. We've seen plenty of that in our lifetimes, I'm sure. But it just depends on that. But that's a topic that maybe we can slice up into bits on the side,
Mhm.
and we can figure out a better way to explain it, and maybe that can support people, if we
Mhm.
do it that way.
Yeah, because I love how you keep saying it. I think the confusion for the collective is the role rather than the energy of how one is connected to themselves. So they look at a list maybe of masculine roles or feminine roles, and then that creates the confusion. So yeah, you guys, we'll go back. I think that's great, Guru. I would love to break that down into smaller bites for people to comprehend on a different scale, because we've been conditioned to think certain ways of those energies. So I think we could touch on that next week a little bit more. I wanted to get into inner child dialogue real quick in the with what are good exercises. So what is inner child dialogue, and then what type of exercises one person can do to connect with their inner child.
This is a really important topic, actually. And I'd like to say right at the very cuff of this that I learned a really valuable exercise when it came to inner child from my guru. It was something that I believe he created and harvested himself. And it's been extremely valuable for everyone that I've shared it with. So this is not my teaching, it is his. I just want to say that right at the very tip of it. And and I'm grateful for it because people find it so 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 valuable. So now, before I get into the exercise itself, I'd actually really like to say that why it's important. And there is, if anyone's ever seen a picture of a god with three different faces, as an example, one of the things that it's talking about in certain circumstances, not all, depending on what you're looking at, has to do with the three phases of life. Now, there's a fourth phase behind that no one ever talks about, but we can get into that another time. So, we're talking about the child phase, the adult phase, and then the senior phase, right? And As you move from the child phase into adulthood, what people don't usually talk about is that child actually stays inside of you, doesn't go anywhere, hangs out, is always there. And the purpose, one of the reasons why, is because of how the child was formed in your consciousness. So, and I know I've said this a few times, so forgive me for repeating myself for those of you that watch all my videos. Up until the age of 7, you're running at about 1,500 neurological synapses. Everything is lit up, and you're able to really just do whatever you want to do. And hopefully you have someone around that'll keep you safe and you won't catch yourself on fire or, poke something in your butt or something like that that's going to hurt you. Because kids will do whatever they want. They'll just, this looks good. No, that's not good to put in your mouth, please. Oh my God. And they'll run off and they'll just keep playing and playing and playing. But the whole purpose of that curiosity and all of your neurons being lit up at the same time is to teach yourself how to be safe, right? So your inner child, the main job of your inner child is to keep you safe. And, and then you do an action maybe 40 or 50 times and your neurological system says, okay, yeah, this is great. This is something that's keeping you safe. We're going to stick with this. You got this. Just stick with this your whole life and you'll be great. But there's a flaw in that way of thinking because as you grow older, what you're doing as a child mentally isn't necessarily something you want to do as an adult. So it's really a very challenging thing to get over because once you get past the age of 7 and you get, into adulthood, your neurological synapses cut in half. And now you're only running at 750. All the power all the power from the ones that weren't being used, they all shut down because you're not using them anyway. And then the power is being put into the freeways you created with all of your repetitive behaviors. So now all of those are always going to do that. Your brain always goes to that. You're always going to do that behavior. You're always going to do. And then as an adult, you're like, but this isn't effective for me and I want to change and it feels really uncomfortable. It's the reason you feel uncomfortable is because certain pathways are now shut down. And your neurological system doesn't want you to create something new because it hasn't been tried and trusted by them when you were a kid, when they went through okay, go to town, let's find out what's going to keep you safe. They've already gone through that with you. They don't want to go through that with you again. So they've created the system. Your neurological synopsis is they in this scenario. Your neurological system, they've created the system where, they're going to shut down all of these pathways so you feel nervous and you feel kind of like, I can't do that, it's something new. But the truth is, it's not real fear. It's just something your neurological system is putting up as a safeguard because you haven't tried and tested that. Right. So going back to inner child, because this does correlate. Your inner child has figured out how to keep you safe. And because all of your neurons were firing at that time, he's bigger than life inside of you and always will. He was the strongest part of you. He was the shiniest light, he or she, or they, respectfully. Shiniest light part of you and sticks around. So that part of you will always jump out to keep you safe all the time, no matter what. So if you're feeling compromised in any way, you're feeling fear, you're being confronted with something that you haven't quite developed yet, to save the day, your inner child will jump out and say, here I am, I'm here to save you, but I don't have the consciousness of an adult, so I might not handle the situation well. But I'm here to save you because I learned all of those things back then when all of the synapses were firing. Right? So here's the thing. In order to get your inner child to understand that it's okay for adult you to take over, there are certain things that you get to do. You get to develop a relationship with your inner child. And I know that sounds cheesy as heck for a lot of people, but I'm telling you right now it works. It really does. So you get to go in there and start having something called inner child dialogue. And this is what my guru's teaching is. And this is my gift to you today. Inner child dialogue involves left hand, right hand, writing. Pad of paper and a pen. So with your dominant hand, whatever hand that is, you're going to write out a script. And it's going to sound something like this. Hi, I know we've never talked like this before. I didn't even know we could. but I want you to know how much I love you and how much I just want to get to know you now. Is there anything that you want to talk about? The whole idea is that you get to be the loving parent towards your inner child, right? You get to be that loving parent towards your inner child, which means that you get to give it everything that they didn't get in the past, and heal it, and you get to develop that relationship with your child, so they know that they're loved, and they know that they can trust you to take over when you don't feel safe, because it's always been their job. So you get to thank them for keeping you safe, you both safe this whole time, and you get to give your inner child another job. Like, maybe we can do this better together. Maybe there's a different way we can do this, instead of getting really upset or insecure when our boss gives us feedback because we did something wrong. Maybe we could do this instead, and start developing that relationship. And eventually, as you work through some of these issues, your inner child, and your word, of course, because if you say on a Tuesday you're going to talk to your inner child at 2 o'clock, you better do it, because your inner child's going to be watching for proof that you're trustworthy, to give you the reins of, like, okay, well, I trust you to keep us safe, so here you go. Adult you can be in control, because all the things that you do that you don't understand, that are out of control or childish, or, gee, I don't even know why I acted like that in that situation. That wasn't smart. I mean, adult me would have done something totally different. That's your inner child. Every single person has it. It's just the way our neurological system was set up in a human body, and that's it. It's that simple. So there, psychologically, you just got to get in there, and you get to bond with that part of yourself, so that you can function in a way, in cohesion, like just in a cohesive way with that part of you, in unity, where you guys are loving each other. It's a great way to fall in love with yourself, because a lot of people don't love themselves. So falling in love with your inner child, and stop ignoring that part of you that has been abandoned and crushed by you, by just like, whatever, I don't care, I'm gonna work is more important, this, I don't want to play, I don't want to relax, I don't want to, there's all kinds of ways that this part of you gets crushed. So you get to get in there, you get to start loving yourself. And going through this process can be a little tricky, which is why people come see me, so I can help them through it. But it's always a big deal. It's always a big deal. And actually, John, if you don't mind, because I've been talking for a little while here, I would I'd love to hear your experience with this exercise, because I know you've done it.
Mm-hmm. The inner child itself is probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, is really the keys to a strong foundation in your adult life. And there's a lot of those traumas that have happened in our childhood that, Guru, you touched on, is like acted out in our adult life. Like, why did I act that way? Or why did I say that? And people are not recognizing their inner child. Sometimes it's wounds, sometimes it's that attention. And have changed that to connection. And through that exercise, I do it probably twice a week. I try to do it more in terms of the writing, but in terms of the actual dialogue, I do it daily, because it was such a breakthrough for me. And so what came up for me in my first journaling with my inner child would be spending more time uh, being more playful with the inner child. So there's so many times where, hey, as an adult, when's the last time we went and played, right? And we see kids play. Maybe we have kids that are viewing this, and you play with your kids and it brings you so much joy. Or maybe you have grandkids now. You have kids that have had kids. I look at my parents, they light up when the grandkids are around. And so I wasn't cutting out time for my inner child to go play, and that might be out in nature. I asked my inner child, well, hey, from 3 to 4, what do you want to do, right? And so maybe they speak up, and I want to go to the harbor, and I remember so many good times at the tide pools, and can we go do that? And it's this inner dialogue with them to cultivate a relationship, because those were, as you were saying, Guru, those are your most important years, 0 to 7, and it really dictates the rest of your life and what has been conditioned for you. Uh, so mine was creating more time was one of them. also too doing the journaling, because it's a breakthrough, you guys. You will be so surprised, and that's what you were hitting on, Guru, of what comes up. Like, just like the inner child, oh, we were dreaming of this moment. Like, give yourself, if you're kind of like in a spot where you're like, I'm not where I need to be right now, I could do better. Your inner child's like rooting you on, uh and really just grateful for where you've turned out. You were dreaming of these types of moments in your adult life when you were a child. So I always thought that was very interesting, and it fires me up because I'm like, what's my inner child going to say today? Obviously, I have those ongoing conversations. As one of the things I brought up to you, Guru, was I had a real hard time going to bed early, because when I was growing up, and like most people, is as a kid you have like a time you need to go to bed, right? Hey, that your parents say, hey, go to bed by 8 p.m., right? And staying up late was like a big deal as a child. And so I was catching myself last year staying up really late, maybe having ice cream or things that maybe were not of my higher choice in my day life, of like, hey, I have big goals. I want to be in my physical body looking good. Um, in the form of purification, I want to eat well. Well, come the nighttime, I was eating ice cream, and this goes on more than we think about. And people get challenged later in the day because we haven't connected with our inner child at the start of the day, and they're looking for connection. So uh, that's kind of my experience, Guru, and I make a conscious effort to connect with them, because they're part of our moments every single day, every present moment. Your inner child is with you and proud of you, and so even when I go to work, or when I'm working in my business, is just touching base with them, like, hey, how's things going? And they're saying certain things, and then one thing that has helped me that I haven't shared with you, Guru, is actually having like a photo of you as a child. So here's me. I don't know if you could see it.
Oh, how cute! I
Having
like
it,
your little cowboy outfit.
yeah, having it in a spot where you could see it, because we talked about last episode is what's tangible to the mind, right? This could be foreign to a lot of people listening to it. How do I connect to my younger self? How, if you really just look at your photo, and you're just having a dialogue with them, your younger version of yourself. And I always talk to little, I call him little Johnny. I just talk to him, and he's doing great. And yeah, sometimes he's not doing well, and that's on me, right? As the adult, like you said, Guru, how are we spending time? And then if you look at, when I don't have any kids, but I look at my sisters or my own parents, is like, part of parenthood is really reconnecting with your inner child through your kids. And we could get on another topic on that, but that's something that I've observed out in the collective, not just with my family, but people that have kids, and you could tell, like, because I work at a grocery store, you guys, is you could tell whether it's a mom or dad, or maybe a grandparent bringing their children in, is how they connect with their children, and it brings them great joy. And when they don't do that, they miss that time. But we don't realize, as people, as we have those moments to connect with our inner child every single day. So my biggest takeaway that I want to add value to you guys is come up with a picture of whatever you want. Like, I have multiple ones in my room, even a good place would be your car, right? We spend so much time in the cars. Just have it handy. And, sometimes we drive far. You just pull that out and look at it and start talking away. Obviously keep your eyes on the road, but it's just a great reminder, um, of our inner child. So I just wanted to add that. I haven't shared that with you, Guru. I don't know if you want to share that with future clients. It's just a great, you just look at that photo, and I think my heart melts. Is just like little Johnny, he dreamed of this moment years and years ago, of whatever I've been up to. So
Aw. Well, I'm glad that works for you. That's really cool. I think it's important to when you're doing the dialogue, you get to definitely, I think over time, if you're doing a lot of writing with yourself. Eventually, maybe you can do some stuff in your head, and that's fine. But at first, it's really, really important to write it out because it works different parts of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And what I don't know if I actually went through the whole thing, but you know, and I know I didn't. So when you're doing the inner child dialogue, you're starting with writing with your dominant hand, and then when your inner child answers, you get to switch hands and go to your non-dominant hand and answer, and it's going to be intentionally messy. I mean, it's going to be working another part of your brain, and it's all so you're going to see a childlike writing on the notepad, which is really important. And you must connect with that part of yourself that feels alone and damaged. Well, I don't even know. I don't see anyone as damaged, but you might
Mm-hmm.
see yourself as damaged. You might see yourself as in pain, or whatever verbiage you want to utilize to explain that state of being for you. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, so you get to put yourself in that position. So not only think about who you were of and where you're coming from with some of this pain, because your inner child in some ways would have grown up with you, but parts of
Mm-hmm.
its consciousness is going to stay the same. So you're going to be able to have conversations you might not have been able to have back then because they would have picked up a few tricks along the way. But it's important to get into that emotional state of, you know, who you were as a child, but also, you know, who you are in the situations where it's creating problems for you. So if it's during, a lot of people have a hard time with feedback. So maybe it's a problem with feedback and the feelings that you get with it and having that conversation. I know a lot of people have those types of issue with at work with their boss. A lot of people, a lot. Sometimes it's with your spouse, and sometimes it's just out in the world and the way people react. Maybe just in a grocery store. Who knows? But
Mm-hmm.
it's just remember those moments and put yourself back in that position and connect it to your inner child and allow yourself to answer and then have that dialogue back and forth. And
Mm-hmm.
until that's healed, it's going to be very difficult, or at least starts to heal. You're not going to be able to have the conversations while you're driving, but it's the picture. I can see it being a good reminder of, hey, I get to connect to this part of myself. But
Mm-hmm.
connect to that part of yourself in writing at least once a day for a little while, maybe a few weeks, and then after that, maybe you can lessen up depending on your progress. But and if you
Mm-hmm.
have any questions about it, then please just reach out and let me support you. Or I'd love to see what's going on in there. So I'll do
It's
everything I can.
I wanted to add, it's super powerful, you guys, when you first start, and it could be scary. Where I know for me, Guru, when I first started, it was like a stop and go type of situation because it did stir up certain things that, like you're saying, haven't been maybe one addressed, or maybe you haven't visited that part of yourself in a long time. So for sure, reach out, you guys. Uh, I think that's it for today, you guys, and just super excited to keep sharing so many incredible topics. Like we've said earlier, email in any topics, drop it in the comments as we post this up on the channel. And just really excited to share this space with you, Guru. Thanks for taking the time. And yeah.
No problem. And I'd like to give a shout out to a friend of mine that is sitting in a courtroom right now, and you know who you are, and you're listening right now, and I'm grateful. And I just want you to know how much I love you and how much I believe in you. And, may everything that's happening right now flow with grace. And know that I'm always with you whenever you need me. And I just love you so much. So I just wanted to say that. No names, just my love.
We love
Okay.
you. And we love everyone tuning in and looking forward to next week, you guys.
Until next time, thanks so much for tuning in. Talk to you soon.